Solano County Fire City Council meeting. Tina is recording the meeting for us. Thank you. And before we get started with tonight's presentation, I wanted to introduce Matt Hardy. He is the new Public Works Manager, and just give him an opportunity to say hello and any other information. How long have you been with the county, Matt?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, like Robin said, my name is Matt Hardy. I'm the new operations manager for Public Works. I've been with the county for a little over 20 years. Been in this role since September, since Casey retired last year, and looking forward to working with you guys and trying to do our best to keep the county safe.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Excited to have you here tonight. Okay, so the presentation for this evening is going to be from Matt Setti and his team, aka Devin, on the outcome of all the work they've been doing for us on the fuel and fire break project from the grant that we've been working on. So I'm going to pass it off to Matt first, I believe.
All right. Thanks, Robin. Hello, everybody. And, we're kind of at the end of our contract, so this will probably be the last time under our contract that we'll see you guys, but we've certainly enjoyed working with the county. What we were able to do with the tail end of our contract was to be able to go through and conduct a series of field assessments throughout the county and make some recommendations on projects and then map and describe those projects in a way that we could advance those to a VTP vegetation clearance and essentially put enough meat on the bone around a project that the county can then take and start to deliver those out as grant funding becomes or other forms of funding become available. So these projects are really a multi-year kind of a strategic approach, and they cover different areas throughout the county based on risk, but they're also aligned geographically. So not necessarily like back of subdivision fire breaks. These are more strategic fuels assessment breaks. We've laid these out to where they will dovetail in with existing work that Green Valley Fire Safe Council has already embarked on, and then lines up with other normal transportation routes and topographical alignments. So the methodology that we laid out when we started on these was to use the CAL FIRE air attack standards on topography. So where you see us laying out essentially most of these are based on a 300-foot wide fuel modification program. Those are quite frequently down ridge lines, things like that, that would line up with how CAL FIRE would look at backburns and air attacks on these fires. So we had myself, one of our forestry scientists, Taya Fisher, which is also one of our burn bosses, and Devin Alston. Devin is graduated out of UNR last year with a degree in natural resource management and was been working on our fire and fuels teams on several different projects in throughout California and Great Basin. And then specifically on this project, Devin did a lot of the field assessments on these. So I'm going to throw this over to him, and he'll walk you through what we've done on this. This is actually each of these projects that we're going to talk about today have a narrative that supports the project, and that extends into the permitting requirements and some of the other elements that we might want to take a look at before you actually implement one of the projects. Overall, they kind of work into a different costs. Essentially, each of them have cost frameworks, but those are really going to be one cost guidance that we'll give the county, and then they'll have a pretty good idea of what they're bidding on when they bring in contractors. We've also classified each of these into the type of contractor that the county would likely want to employ on these. So depending on the severity of vegetation, the degree of vegetation and the complexity of the proposed treatment, the capabilities of the contractor would change a little bit on that. So Devin, why don't you go ahead and share your screen and jump in on that?
One question before you start.
Sure.
If people have questions or there's any discussion, would you like that to wait until the end, or should they pop in with questions while you're going through?
I think we're fine hopping in with questions. I'll keep myself unmuted. Devin, you're still on mute. And one of us, so, but why don't you go ahead and just jump in with questions as we go through this? I don't think that'll interrupt much.
Thank you.
All right, hey everybody, I'm sharing my screen right now. There we go. All right, so as Matt just said, my name's Devin. I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Solano County Wildfire Fuels Reduction Project. So what is the Solano County Wildfire Fuels Reduction Project? It's a series, it's a project to help mitigate fire hazard risk in Solano County, specifically in the wildland urban interface area, or the WUI, using our forest management tools. Can you guys see the full PowerPoint? How can I hide that? There we go. Oh, never mind. Okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, specifically in the WUI, using some prescription treatments, and we'll get into what prescription treatments are later. So the overall setup of it is about 3,000 acres divided into 9 segments with 29 units. We can talk about the difference between a segment and a unit a little bit later down the road. So we use these things called hazard fuel site assessments. And those are ranking systems that we use to.
Can you help me get pepper out and pepper on these, please? Sorry about that.
We have a ranking system of environmental factors at different locations throughout the various segments. We'll talk about that as well later. We also have our vegetation reduction, our prescription treatments throughout the entire area. Again, we'll go over that in a little bit. All right, hazard fuel assessments. So through those segments that we went through, last time I went to Solano County, I drove through the various areas and I stopped at places that kind of stuck out to me as a potential wildfire risk. We ranked every spot that I stopped at from low, medium, or high based on our scorecard right here. As you can see, this one is relative to segment 3. I'll show you that in a little bit again. We've got environmental conditions, location, aspect, direction, slope. All of those things can affect the severity of a wildfire. So it was important to note that in an assessment.
Devin, before you get too far, really we have 2 groups of projects. The initial set of projects were really focused on those things that the county could do immediately within county right-of-ways on roads. So we have a county right-of-way suite of projects, and then we have projects that involve private lands. So they're all assessed the same way, but in general, we have 2 different classifications of projects here. Go ahead, Devin.
So the whole name of the game, the whole point of this is to assign prescription treatments to the various areas throughout Solano County. A few prescription treatments are ways that we can reduce likelihood of wildfire, at least the devastation of wildfire. Some of those and some methods include roadside mowing, hand felling, mechanical mastication, and herbivory, using goats, shout out goats. In using these tools, we want to see something like this. These are examples from other places in California. Up here would be a good example of maybe using herbivory. You could literally put goats on the side of a mountain and they'll do what they do. They're going to eat, and that in turn reduces vegetation. Here we've got kind of the same vibe. If you look closely, you can see that this after is a lot cleaner than the before. So they probably use a combination of maybe hand felling, herbivory, maybe mechanical mastication, but that's kind of a steep slope to get some big machines on there. So yeah. All right. So I keep saying that we're going to get into the segments and the units. So we're going to use segment 3 as an example, Cantaloupe Corridor. It's got 4 units. Their units make a segment. So essentially units are subsegments. The segment is the big one. The units are the little ones. So here we have segment 3, which goes through like English Hills, Cantaloupe, all that. We applied our hazard assessments. So this one is assessment 11, which if you look carefully, you see I got it from right in there. So when I was driving through Solano County, specifically this area, I was like, oh, this gulch is extremely overgrown, major hazard. So I noted it in our hazard assessments, gave it a score. Yeah. And then judging from that and based on all the other data, we've assigned some mowing, grazing, hand felling, all that jazz. And you can see we're divided by acres by unit, depending on what treatment it's going to get. Most areas are going to need like a hybrid of multiple treatments, which is why we got mowing, grazing, and hand felling, because you can't put goats everywhere.
One
So
of
now
the
that you guys
things
kind
that
of get the after you met.
Devin, I was going to say, one of the things to mention is, these are all first flush treatments. So quite often a given area might need mechanical treatment to start with, and then the following year, the 2 years later or whatever, you follow it up with a less invasive grazing or something along those lines, weed control or something. So understanding that once you establish a vegetative fuel modification corridor of some sort, these are all based along offsets from roads, then you do the heavy lifting in the first year of treatment, and then maintenance treatments thereafter as needed. Sorry, go ahead.
One thing I might have forgot to note is that every assessment has a photo sheet attached to it. That's kind of the biggest benefit of having these hazard assessment sheets, because you could just you could look on the map and say, oh, assessment number 13, you'd go find assessment 13. It'd have a layout of all the vegetation that you'll probably see in the area. So now that we see like the kind of overall premise of like what a segment is and what we're doing there, I'll just show you guys like all the different segments that we have really quickly. So we've got one, you guys can count 1, 2, 3, 4 through 9 total, 29 units. Blue Ridge Foothills in this light blue, Blue Ridge Summit, at the very top of the mountains. Cantaloupe Corridor, our example segment. Segment 4, which is in the northwest, kind of by the dam. Segment 5, the canyons, super overgrown there. I've got a couple pictures later in the slide to show you what that looks like right now. Segment 6, Poudre Creek Hills. 7, Pleasant Valley Road. 8, Sassoon Valley. And 9, which are some transmission zones that need some work done. Here's just a better
Segment 9 is your Green Valley area as well.
Yeah.
So those kind of are suggestions of complementing the work that's currently being done in there.
Here's some kind of more up close map of the segments, so you can see their exact units and stuff where they are. So that's 1 through 3. Give you a quick little look. 4 through 6. 7 through 8. And then here's some, like I said, there are some examples of these were taken from the hazard assessment sheets. Some of like the most notable ones would be my favorite segment was segment 1, because it's so close to the neighborhood of Paradise Valley, I believe. So that would be a great area to use some grazing, some goats, get them on those hills to take some of the grasses down. Like I mentioned before, we had segment 5 were the canyons, extremely overgrown on the roads that would take you to the top of the summit at Baca Mountain. And yeah. Thanks.
So, okay, thank you, Devin. So in general, what we're talking about here is we've created a data set for the county to use in soliciting contracts and applying described projects with available funding. This really came about kind of as an outgrowth of the grant that Nancy's team has put together for the USDA Community Wildfire Defense Grant work. And so these projects dovetail into what's being requested in that, but not knowing whether that grant was going to be awarded or not, we wanted to make these segmented enough and packaged enough that we have maps, quantifications that you can go out to bid with individual suites of contractors and have some comparable and bid ready projects. So these effectively become shovel ready projects when we do the additional elements of cultural resources, which is pretty simple on most of these, depending on what the prescription is, and align up what kind of budget. So depending on the budget, we have recommendations on cost per acre in a lot of these, but that may vary depending on how the budgets come in. So that way you can increase them or decrease them. The overall segments are designed to bring together logical geographical areas, so you don't have contractors spread out all over the place. And then we also detail whether or not traffic control is going to be required. We've classified these into using California Forest Practice Act standards of less than and greater than 30% slopes, some of these other types of elements like that. So with that, to pull out of that, Devin, go ahead and give up your sharing and we'll field some questions.
Hey Matt, it's David Stevens.
Hi, David.
Good evening. Hey, can we get a copy of those slides to share with our Fire Safe Council?
Yeah, Nancy and Robin or Tina will have them all, and they'll go ahead and distribute those,
Excellent.
or they'll work with you on that. So,
Thank you.
and like we said, because of limitations on time, we did not go on the private lands and walk all of the private lands. We did do an extensive analysis using the last several years of aerial photos, and then we worked with the county GIS, got their best available data, and laid those in. Then the work products that we've developed are all georeferenced. So all the photographs are georeferenced, and all of our assessment points and everything else are georeferenced. So they have point files and shape files of all of these to be used, and they can be used in Google Earth if you want. I mean, you can really do it anyway, but they're designed to be able to be put back into the county GIS system.
And sorry, Matt, this is Mark Junie. One more time, who do we request a copy from?
We will send it to you. Actually, if we get a copy, can we just drop it in the chat? Tina, do you have the final copy?
I will get it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Devin, did you send that final copy back to Tina yet? Okay.
Any other questions for Matt and Devin? So there's a question in the chat, Matt, for what role does cultural fire, prescribed fire have in this plan?
So we did not define things as prescribed fire in here because of the lack of, in my opinion, consensus within the county on the use of prescribed fire. I think that there are many of these that we've noted where, especially from a maintenance standpoint, the prescribed fire is absolutely applicable, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done between coordination between CAL FIRE and the local fire districts prior to the point at which prescribed fire is a widespread maintenance practice or fuels reduction practice. The intent here is to, especially with the mechanical treatment in the higher density areas and areas that we have canopies on, is to prepare, by removal of ladder fuels and isolation of the canopy from the ground fuels, is to prepare some of these areas to where if the site conditions are appropriate, you can put fire to the ground in the future as a maintenance activity or as a fuels reduction activity, and have that initial work that would need to be done regardless of the nature of prescribed fire, like ladder fuel removal. So I think this is setting the stage for future efforts to where you could put prescribed fire out here once the legwork on coordinating prescribed fire throughout the county is done.
Yeah.
And like, I guess on the issue of cultural burning, I view, we get involved in some cultural burning, and I view cultural burning as a very specific type of prescribed fire. So where we're trying to do fuels reduction through the application of prescribed fire on a broad basis, sometimes we're looking at more specific ecological or cultural results. For instance, burning willows like we work with a community over here where we burn willows because of basket making. And some of those types of more very specific cultural applications of the use of fire versus just fire prevention. Chats.
I had a question. My
Rochelle.
Go ahead.
So first of all, Matt, good to see you. And Devin, forgive me because I have another meeting I'm trying to scramble out, so I may have missed this. But when you were talking about that this is really going to be ready for bid ready, shovel ready work, it seems to me that if you did largely this from a roadside view, that really what we need is having some kind of environmental document, whether it's a CEQA, whether it's a CalVTP or a NOE. And so when you see it in this way, how is this going to actually be useful? Is it to then say, hey, these spots were already identified, we need to take the next step to hire a registered professional forester to do the environmental reviews, or archaeologist, et cetera? What is the real next steps on this?
So we have run IPAC surveys on everything with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and addressed sensitive species, cross-reference those to all the areas. So with respect to what needs to happen for a CalVTP, that legwork has been done. We have not submitted this to CalVTP yet. However, shapefile wise and all of the geospatial files wise, it's ready to go that route. So it would be our intent then, and one of the sections that we have in the main report is some guidance to the county on how to implement this group of projects eligibility to the CalVTP as the county sponsored CEQA process. The one difference here is there are a fair number of these projects that are within county right-of-ways that fall under the existing maintenance exemptions under CEQA that the county could actually go to bid tomorrow on, because they have those those exemptions out there, right? Or I shouldn't say tomorrow, but I mean, there's a difference there if it's within the right of way on the road versus taking on a bigger section out there. So the intent of the presentation here was to provide a suite of projects that could be submitted through the CalVTP process. And then obviously there's some follow-up work to do in there. And we've delineated those areas that would require sensitive species surveys or additional clearances.
And if I can ask a quick follow-up question, and that is related to the county right-of-way. And you know, I'm assuming, because it's the county's responsibility to clear that 30 feet on either side in the right-of-way, that they're not going to be waiting, and that this might be for Robin or Nancy a question, but not going to be waiting for funds to do that. There's some high-risk areas. We still have Upper Rock Creek Road and Glen Canyon Road that was supposed to be cleared that got stopped by the county, and it's still not cleared. And that, just so everybody knows, if there's a wildfire that comes through like the LNU or the Paradise, people are at risk of losing their lives and getting trapped up there because it's one way in, one way out. And so for me, that's a huge point of concern that the county should be addressing. So I just like to hear a little bit more about how the county is going to move forward on addressing those right of ways. That's their responsibility, and really targeting those high risk areas where there is one way ingress egress.
I'm going to refer that question to Matt Hardy. He introduced himself, I think, just before you logged in, Rochelle. So he is the new ops manager over Public Works and replaced Casey Bowers.
Yeah, so we are currently working on still removing vegetation clearing right of ways. Unfortunately, you know, we only have so much manpower and we cover the whole county, so we're constantly getting complaints. You know, we just had some storm events, high wind events, and we're still cleaning up after it. We're constantly following up, trying to get stuff cleaned up, it seems. And it makes it difficult to keep up with our normal maintenance schedule, to be honest.
So Matt, would you be willing to provide your contact information, and I can follow up with you afterwards?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you. And just for everybody to know, I'm going to transition because I have a 6:30, so I'm going to move to my phone here in just a moment.
Yeah, Leanne. Leanne, you have your hand raised. are muted, so I don't know if you're speaking. Okay. And Tracy had a question in the chat. If it will be a Cal VPP. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
I just kind of answered some of that. Tracy's question
Okay.
was really that there's additional surveys that are required even under Cal VTP, and she's correct. However, this is essentially a screening level to say, okay, where do we need to do some of these? And obviously, depending on where we are, what time of year, we have everything from migratory bird treaty act surveys to sensitive state and federal sensitive plant and wildlife surveys. So it is true there are additional surveys. However, we've identified many of those through the public databases, the Fish and Wildlife Service databases, in order to do that pre-screening, so we know the areas that have longer lead times and those areas that are more project ready, I should say. But what Tracy stated in there is correct.
If I could follow up on that, Robin, and sorry, you guys, I'm in another event here tonight. I've just been surprised. We just got a Cal VTP approved over in Napa, and the amount of surveying and the time it's going to take is really slowing us down. Like for burn piles, any burn pile that's within 60 feet of any kind of water course, a seep, a spring, a class 3. We have to survey every single pile for Pacific giant salamander, foothill yellow-legged frog within 1,500 feet for western pond turtle. So, I mean, it's just a lot. And with the new bumblebee stuff, it's really slowing stuff down. So I think it's great you're going the VTP route, and hopefully there's going to be some legislative help in the next year. But I think we all need to realize that our projects aren't as shovel ready as we thought when we're using the Cal VTP, that we kind of need to plan at least another year to get all those surveying done. So just a heads up.
That's very good to know. Thank you for sharing that. Matt, would you be able to speak on your program, the weed spray program, and what time of year that typically happens? And Leanne has a question about when the crews spray the weeds along the public right of way.
Sure, yeah. So we attempt to spray all paved roads that are county maintained. As far as when we start, it kind of depends on the weather. If it's still raining, we like to try to wait until the rain stops, because we're spraying a contact herbicide, which, as soon as it rains again, new vegetation grows. So we try to wait until, the rainy season's pretty much over, which hopefully we're getting close to. And I know stuff is starting to go crazy out there already with 70-degree temperatures. So I'm hoping within the next month we'll be getting started. And typically we spray early in the season when the grasses are young and tender, to try to get control of them early. There is factors in there, wind and rain, like I mentioned before. If it's 10-mile-an-hour wind or higher, that operation shuts down. So we can go extended periods of time without being able to spray herbicides. So it really just depends on the weather, honestly. And then later in the season, we also do follow-up spraying after we mow. So once we, take the vegetation down, we'll come through and reapply to try to, again, maintain it from regrowth after that. So we should be in the next month getting started on mowing and herbicide application.
Thank you.
Hey, Robin, it's David. I have a question when appropriate.
Sure, go ahead.
So a couple questions. One, did the work that Devin and Matt worked on create priorities for, as an example, like Rochelle just mentioned, clearing along the public roadways? Have priorities been put to these efforts? Because specifically in the, LNU burn scar area, the number of tree kill along the roadways, which are ingress, egress routes are still very sensitive and vulnerable to dead, down, dying trees. And I'm wondering, where these things are going to start falling with regards to priority and helping to gain additional funding to pursue these things so that we can start to relieve some anxieties in the community.
Yeah, so the goal was to take the work that Matt put together and bring it to our local subject matter experts, which is not me. So we were going to bring it to the impacted fire jurisdiction leadership to discuss with them all the work that went into it and have a full discussion on what that priority would look like and how that funding, when obtained, would be applied. So we did submit an application for the USDA grant that we're waiting to hear back from. I think in the next month, we'll hear something back on that, which was a $10 million grant application. So if we were to get that or even partial on that, actually, I'm sorry, scratch that. I don't believe they do partial allocations. Then we would be able to make a pretty big chunk in the list. Unknown if we'd be able to cover it all, but I'm just going to guess, given the price of everything these days, probably not. But the prioritization would really be discussed and created in collaboration with the experts in the field.
Okay, thank you.
David, I would have to say, David, that most of these areas are some level of priority. We have another exercise within our GISs here that we have looked at the locations of projects with respect to the county's GIS coverage of critical infrastructure, roads, water systems, communication cell towers, those type fire departments, those kind of areas, in order to at least highlight where those are for the decision makers to make those decisions. But like what you're saying, the LNU areas where we have trees that we know are going to fall, there's also a narrative discussion of each of these projects that goes in the report that goes to Robin's team there, and we discuss some of those priorities within that.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So I do have a follow-up question. What has it been documented or has it been captured, the percent of tree kill in the LNU burn scar?
I don't have that.
Not by our efforts.
Okay.
I mean, I can check with CAL FIRE, but it wouldn't be all inclusive to date. I don't know that anything exists from the time of the fire to date.
Okay.
Great question.
So what's our next steps to I know we're all patiently and eagerly awaiting funding, but what are our next steps that we need to rally the troops in the communities and help, drive some change in the community?
I mean, I think our next step is, just given the size and scope of the grant that we did submit, and that it should be coming out soon on the decision. I think our next step is seeing if we get that funding to really move a lot of the projects forward. But other than that, identifying additional funding sources and trying to identify other grants that we can apply to that we can start moving the project forward, but also just taking that finalized report to the local fire agencies and really getting their input on all the data and the priorities and what that looks like.
Thank you.
Chief Abrazini, do you have any thoughts or comments on that? You're going to be one of the people I shoulder tap to take a look at this and give input.
Sorry about that. I had to find my mute button. I think you covered everything pretty well. Like I said, there's just a lot of stuff that's coming down that we're trying to work on, grants and other things. So it just takes a little bit of time to get down the road with it.
but then also all the work that's on public right of way. I know Matt Hardy and Nancy and Tina and myself met with Matt Setti and Devin to discuss the project also and what that looks like as far as what the separation was between work on public right of way versus work on the private property. We also have to work through the right of entry process for private property work and the legalities of that. So there's some work related to even there's setup work that we have to work through before we can step foot on anybody's properties. But we did discuss that and what that looks like and how we can get some templates and not start from scratch on some of these things since this is already happening in lots of other places. But then, you know, as Matt Hardy discussed, starting the county's program with the conclusion of winter and how his normal operating plan can work in conjunction with public right-of-way areas that have been identified, as well as wrapping in funding that we've already been working on and discussing, like some of the DOD funding. So we've been meeting and talking with Chris Rose and Karen on like hazard tree removal programs and funding that the board approved from that DOD money to go into to help support the program that they're already working on, just to really try and get some more work done in the area. So I think there's a couple of things happening all at the same time. But I think the continued interest from you guys and keeping your neighbors and your community interested and excited and getting ready to start rolling into post-winter preparing for fire season time, where they have to start addressing any of those fuels that have accumulated over the winter before we head into fire season and really start looking at that defensible space work is really critical as well.
So one more question, if I could. Matt, you had indicated that there are some CEQA exemptions. Could you provide some examples that would be beneficial for us to look at a couple of those exemptions for Solano County to have some work done and you know, just a couple specific examples just so we can have a better understanding of what that means.
You know, I was really referencing there are some existing capabilities that the county can do within their maintenance program on their right of ways. One of the things that we also tried to identify in here is areas within the right of way work that would enable more efficient mowing systems. So that's the kind of the cheapest and easiest roadside fuel reduction work that gets done. So we identified those kind of areas that the county could go in, remove, you know, clumps of bushes or whatever they have within the right of way. That being done, then they could expand the mowing efforts in there. So I guess I was really referencing more along the lines of work within the county right of ways and those actions that qualify as maintenance actions.
So, okay, so based on that, then would things or could things, and Freddie, this is something I'd be looking for your input on, but as an example, again, with roadside clearances, historically, and when I say historically, 25, 30 years ago in Solano County, many of the fire districts went around the community and did roadside abatement through prescribed fire throughout Solano County with tremendous results, including all of Green Valley, Rockville, you know, Susan Valley. Are those things that are being weighed and considered again?
Well, from the fire district standpoint, that was like you're saying, it was many, many years ago. And what they did was burn from the pavement to the fence lines. Over the years, there hasn't really been much discussion of the main reason why. I know it was getting harder and harder for some of the right-of-way issues with the property owner if they actually burnt onto the other side, that you'd had to get some kind of permission if you lost it. Because again, just for us, for prescribed fire, we have to go through the same legal stuff and fill out all the blank of the paperwork to make sure that we can get it done appropriately and get the sign off with air quality and everybody else. So it just got harder over the years, but we haven't quite ventured down that road yet to see if it's possible again to do it.
Okay, so because I mean, we're talking about, you know, attempting to be more efficient and more effective. I know something that Casey Bowers had struggled with in time is, especially a wet year like we're experiencing, is they'd go through doing a mowing or even spraying, and then they would get hit with some late season rains, and you know, essentially all effort was lost. That was, you know, both money and resource with regards to equipment. So burning offers
Yeah,
a
I mean,
more effective resource potentially.
yeah, it is a great tool. Some of the issues that did arise back when up in the mountain range and the hillsides is you burn everything off, and then when it came into the following winter, it all came for erosion control. So when we do burn it down to bare mineral soil, it worked very efficiently on the flatlands, but when you got up in the hillsides on the right of ways along the roadsides, the erosion control became the issue. So those are things that we just have to factor in of where you could do it and the possibility of looking at all the other factors that we have to deal with.
Thanks, Freddie.
Thank you. Great discussion. Any other questions or discussion topics? Okay. So,
Robert, I could throw one more thing in for you that we're trying to work on. Kind
Yeah.
of falls in lines with what Dave's talking about. So our agency is working with Suisun City and Fairfield on looking at in the last year around Airbase Parkway, we had the fire that started behind Pick and Pull that threatened the southeast side of Suisun City and got into the fence lines and some backyards. Didn't burn any structures down, but we're looking at doing some kind of fuel breaks and some possibly firing out in the future here shortly, of trying to plan that out. So we are working with other agencies trying to get some of the fuel breaks around places that we can, but it is a process, but that's in the works as we speak.
Awesome.
So we're gonna move to partner updates. And I know Rochelle said she had another meeting, so I don't know if she's gonna be able to pop back on, but see if Rochelle had anything to share from Green Valley Fire Safe Council. Okay, David, do you have anything to share from Pleasant Valley Fire Safe Council?
So at our February general meeting, we had a guest speaker who had just completed reconstructing his home that lives at the north end of Pleasance Valley Road. He has reconstructed his home in largely all non-combustible products. He used a product that was a combination of concrete and cellulose material made out of um, chippings from wood that were turned into concrete blocks. And the home's construction is pretty incredible. We hope to have him present that one more time in a different forum and get it recorded, because I think a lot of community members that may be constructing in the wildland urban interface or reconstructing in the wildland interface would be potentially very beneficial for them to see what his experiences were and the construction methods that they used, because insurance is becoming more and more challenging, and more and more people are either being canceled or not able to obtain insurance at all. So I think it would be a great resource for that information to be available for everybody. But our speaker for the month of March is going to be an individual from HUD HCD for a couple programs that they're offering. One is reconstruction or renovating as a result of or following the LNU complex. And then another piece of it is doing retrofitting to where there are monies available. There's grant dollars available to Solano County residents for the installation of fire protection features, such as installing new fire resistive roofs, gutters, gutter guards, replacing downspouts that may be combustible materials, replacing the siding on their homes, having soffits installed on the underside of their eaves, managing the vegetation around the first 5 foot of the home. These things are all available to Solano County residents with a lot of obstacles per se. There's income qualifications, there's the documentation process was quite lengthy. I believe it was in excess of up to page J in forms. So it was not a small process, but they do accept applications over the phone. And I think we do need to push this out and market this to folks in Solano County because it is a tremendous resource. So that's all I have currently. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Karen?
Robin?
Oh, yes.
This is, hi, I was here. I just couldn't, I'm driving and I couldn't get my mute off, so I apologize. This
No
is
problem.
Raquel. So we are having the firm Mason Bruce Gerard are finishing up the botanical and archaeological surveying for some of the areas that weren't surveyed for our Cal VTP, with the anticipation of starting the work again, probably pretty heavy by mid-March to late March, weather pending, because there's some weather restrictions that go on with that. And then one of the things that I had written in the first grant was that we would have a $10,000 incentive for any group that became Firewise, and so I've been working with Pleasant Valley Fire Safe Council to be able to use some of those funds, and so we're moving forward with the plan, which is exciting. And then also talking to another group, possibly 2 other groups, about that. And so that's all on our end.
Great, thank you. And Karen?
Yeah. So with Solano RCD updates, we have been in touch with a lot of people about post-fire tree removal on riparian areas. And we do have a request for proposals out for registered professional foresters. That is up on our website. I will drop the link into the chat here. So please, if you know any RPFs, encourage them to view our RFP. If you have more acronyms to add into that mouthful, we're open to hearing it. And that will be open through through almost the end of March. So please share that around if you know anybody. Other updates, one of the funding sources that we have been a part of is RCPP. Some of you may have heard me mention that before. That is the Regional Conservation Partnerships Program. And that one is federal cost share funding that is distributed through the Natural Resource Conservation Service. It's very similar to EQIP, if anybody is familiar with that. The next application deadline for RCPP is coming up on April 5th. So this is a pot of funding that we are a part of with a number of other counties in the area. And it provides funding specifically for fire-related practices. So a lot of clearing and snagging and a lot of brush clearing. There's an emphasis on fuel reduction. So if there are lands that you think would be eligible and where these practices would be appropriate, I will put my email address in the chat box, and I encourage anybody to contact me with questions about that. Carolyn, do you have anything that you would like to add about RCPP? Chat.
Glad to join y'all for this meeting today. Thanks for having me. So I'm a team engineer for NRCS out of Vacaville. Glad to be here again. I just put the link to the program description in the chat, and it's all in, I'll say NRCSEs, such that you have to, right? You have to understand from our conservation planners what each of those standards mean. But yeah, we're accepting applications, and we have a big deadline coming up in about a week. And then a really good time to apply is right after that. And so whichever conservationist comes out to your property to help you out with our CPP will help you identify which practices will meet the conservation goals that you have on your property. And yes, you have to be an agricultural producer of some sort to qualify for our programs. So if anyone has any questions, I'm here. And I can also defer to Karen. She's been a great partner with us on these projects.
Last few things from Solano. We do have our spring native plant sale scheduled for Saturday, March 23rd. There will be 2 fire resilient landscaping workshops offered, as well as a monarch butterfly workshop. So stop by Berryessa Brewing Company on that Saturday for some tasty beer, some good plants, and a generally educational time, and hopefully fun. Our plant sales are usually pretty fun. We are scrambling hard to find some great opportunities to spend down the last hour CAL FIRE or wildfire prevention planning grant or education grant funds that we have through the county. So we're working on some projects through that, and we will hopefully be sharing those with you at our next meeting. Jorge, did you have a question for me, or is that something that you wanted to share with the group?
Just something to share once everyone's done.
That's it for Solano.
I'll just add to those of you that want to contact NRCS about our CPP projects. Please contact Terry Knight. I think she's copied on these events as well. She's the district conservationist in Vacaville covering Solano County. If anybody else needs her email address, I'll go ahead and just drop it in the chat. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. Okay, Chief O'Connor's not on, but Chief Aberzini, do you have anything from the fire district chiefs?
Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff going on. Everything's kind of the grant season right now, so we've been working together, trying to coordinate, trying to get some new extrication equipment through the Office of Traffic Safety for some of the departments here, and then working on the FEMA stuff, trying to update some of the other equipment that we're doing. So it's just busy times.
Thank you. Chief Long for the city fire chiefs is not on. Neither is Chief Bengrel from CAL FIRE, but he did text and say that they're currently scoring the grants that were applied for and that their seasonal staff returns in March. That was his update. And Tanya's not on. Sherry Gardner. Sherry from Napa Community Firewise Foundation, do you have anything to share?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button either. Let's see. So we're working away on the other side of the county line, and we have Gordon Valley Fire Safe Council and Coombsville Wild Horse Fire Safe Councils. I think Eileen Pereira from Coombsville Wild Horse has been on this call a couple times, but both she and Dan McQueenie in Gordon Valley would love to connect up with your fire safe councils and do some collaborations across the county line. We are trying to do some planning on our side of the road for working from Wild Horse Road to Shady Brook to the end of the county road and continuing further, possibly into Solano County in collaboration with your public works, doing some additional work adjacent to what Vallejo, City of Vallejo has been doing. up by the Lake Madrigal, I believe, and the Ranch Gate. Our plan is to work on doing CEQA NOE exemptions for work along the road, and then be able to do some roadside fuel reduction there. So stay tuned. And that's it for right there right now.
Okay, thank you.
But we are we are working on trying to get all of our fire safe councils recognized as FireWise communities as well.
That's awesome.
And Coombsville Wild Horse is recognized, and Gordon Valley's next.
Great. Thank you. Jorge, and you had a comment?
Yes, hi, good evening, everybody. Once again, sorry about the distraction earlier with my daughter making some food here. So I'm Jorge Solano, Disaster Services Program Manager with Catholic Charities, and just wanted to share, we just had a VOAD meeting for Solano County presentation from California Housing and Urban Development. Sorry, not Urban Development, that's HUD, but it's I'm going to drop it in the chat here. They are trying to identify folks that are in the rebuilding phase to help them tap into some grant money and some assistance. It's housing and community development out of California. And so I just dropped their contact information in the chat for Fatima, which is an outreach specialist. And so we had a meeting last month where they presented all their different resources and assistance, helping with those long applications and making sure folks qualify. And so it's a free service, and they just wanted to reach out to folks that are in the rebuilding phase. And so just wanted to bring this to your attention.
Thank you. That is in the chat, so please share with anybody that you know that's rebuilding in your area. Thank you, Jorge.
Hey, Robin, I had a follow-up for Jorge on that.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Jorge, is your staff or yourself available to help support individuals in filling out those applications, or would they be using a rep from HCD or HUD?
More than likely, we can just connect you with HCD, as I have not touched one of those applications personally, nor has my staff.
Okay.
But as far as FEMA applications and that kind of thing, yes. But HCD, we haven't done that yet. However, I can work with you on exploring that as well, or if you have any hiccups. Fatima said she'd be more than willing to help out and walk people through it.
Okay.
So thank you, David.
Thank you.
So the Ag Pass training is tomorrow. I don't know if anyone in this group is going to be on that, but if so, I will see you tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining. This brings us to the end of our meeting. I hope you all have a lovely and safe Monday night.
Thank you.